interdisciplinary journal. You can do that, but you gotta do that. You can talk to people outside the university, clientele groups. All that is good. So you have no excuse for not liking what you do, but you have to understand that that's what you're getting into. And you can go through the travails that Stephen has gone through and even the rest of us have gone through. But if you don't want to do that, then you're in the wrong business. So, and it's great freedom too. Maybe too much freedom sometimes. But you've got to love the job. So know what you're getting into. Assistant professors, establish your career first. Put a little distance between you and graduate school so that you get a little seasoned, you understand what it is like, how you develop your own style. Unfortunately, I think our departments are smaller now than they used to be. Shortly after I arrived at Kentucky, there were 32 faculty members there, and a lot of them were very senior people. So as an assistant professor, I didn't talk at faculty meetings, I didn't advise graduate students, I didn't get involved in all sorts of things. And it was to my benefit that I didn't have to. Now, we have, I don't know, how many do we have, Barry? 23, something like that? Or 20? And so all the work of the department has to be shouldered on all sorts of people. So I know you can't go back to the good old days when I started. But you as an assistant professor or even an associate professor need to shield yourself as much as you can to establish your career and go forward from that. There are colleagues, and very well-known colleagues of mine, who established a more solid research in a very narrow area and was very successful because they were able to stay away from all those other activities that had to go on for the department level but didn't have to be done by assistant professors. So be as careful as you can. And then for full professors, be careful about administrative appointments. I mean, it's once you get going, then you get in the track and you either go in that track or then you worry about, well, what am I going to do afterwards, you see? I'm 46 years, this is a scenario, I'm not 46 years old. Surprise. I'm 52. I'm losing credibility, aren't I? But anyway, if you're 46 and you become a department chair, I mean, where do you jump off after that? 4 years, or our university 6 years? You jump back into academia? I don't know. If you're a bench scientist, they close up your lab and you don't have anything to go back on. So you have to be careful about that. Be careful about what your track is. Always keep your foot in the real core of, I would say, unless you're really committed to kind of move up that track into the dead zone of department chair and then associate dean and dean and be careful. I never did that, and I'm glad I never did. Though I did these little things that I like doing, but I can also do research and consulting and other things associated with it. Now, for the future of Ag Econ, which was part of the charge, I guess, I am clueless, let me tell you. It's a different game. But money, you know, is so different now. Money has always dictated a lot, but outside money dictates everything now, which is a shame. You know, if you work at a land-grant university, whether or not it's is it a public university? Well, it's increasingly losing its publicness. My university, about 6 to 8% of its money comes from the state. Right? That's not very public. It wasn't too long ago that it was around 18%. We've had a budget cut every year since 2008. And the uniqueness of agriculture. Now, I wondered about this shortly after my entry into the profession as a professor, but how long is agriculture going to be unique, not only with respect to research, but also with respect to funding sources? So in that regard, You might, as a portfolio, think about how you publish too, just in case you have something like Washington State happen and you lose your ag econ department. Well, can you be in an econ department? How could I fit in? With the whole idea that, 40 years, for me, I mean, you might not stay in the profession for 40 years, but you might. In 40 years, the profession is going to change a whole lot between what it is now. What it will be, I don't really know. But if I were in your shoes and waiting for 4 years, I'd sort of position myself so that I have enough options as to, if it changes this way, I can do that. If it changes that way, I can do that. And then I harken back to what Stephen said, because most of the stuff that Stephen said was basic information, basic types of conceptual tools, empirical tools that you can use no matter how the profession goes. So it's people like Stephen that can sway and work in all sorts of areas. So maybe that's a little advice too. Well, I've gone on. I'm sure that Jeff is a little bit heated under the collar. I probably went on longer than I should have, but I really do appreciate not only the opportunity to speak with you, but I appreciate this association. I mean, it's really a great group of people that go all the way from those undergraduates that seem so enthusiastic and especially at the party last night, they were enthusiastic, by the way. Your liquor bill might be a little high, Jim. But anyway, all the way to the people that I've known for so many years. So it was nice to address you, and I thank you for the award.
Thank you very much, Mike. And yes, they're all sitting over there at the table yelling at you to listen to you. Next, I'm going to introduce John VanSickle. So John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, as I was preparing for this and reading over yours and Mike's. I have Mike at 40 years and you at 39. So you're younger?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes, it's close.
All right.
But his was 40.
Right. 40, 39, 40, yeah. So John has also spent his entire career at one university. It's a really awesome university, University of Florida. In a fairly similar area, talking about trade, but with a little bit of a different angle and with majority extension appointment. And so we'll probably hear a little bit about this. Been involved in policy, farm bill education, and especially focused, given Florida, on specialty crops area. John's also known for teaching programs, appreciated by the students. He's developed, many of you know in this room, FactSim, a program that's used around the U.S. to train students on commodity and futures markets, and has served the SAEA for, we think, possibly the longest time as secretary, so maybe 6 years as secretary, and finally managed to pass that off to Nathan last year. So congratulations, John.
Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate that. I got a lot of people I need to thank. They're starting with Lisa and Spiro for putting together my package. I appreciate that a lot. And of course, there's a lot of other people that contributed to my package, and those included Jeffrey Gillespie, Nathan Smith, Damona Doy, Larry Sanders, and James Richards. My thanks to each one of you for what you did contribute. And I'm sure I'm overlooking some people perhaps. So if I did, it's by mistake, not because I intended to. My thanks also goes out to the awards committee, Eduardo Segarra, Bill Herndon, and Kim Jensen. Job well done. These two folks are really good. Following Mike is a tough role. For those of you that were in the trade session that was yesterday, I told Mike earlier, I said, you should have filmed that. That's a message that's not getting out. In fact, I asked him to put that together in a small package that we could distribute and work on in the States, because that message is completely overlooked. And he did such a good job on that subject yesterday, dealing with exchange rates and the macro impacts of trade. That we need those things, so job well done. I've looked at how I could go through this and tell you about what I've done and what my thoughts are, and I really wanted to do it through people. I've had a chance to work with a whole lot of really good people over the years. And I'm going to start with the association, SAEA. What a great association this is. We think it's the largest regional association that we've got in ag economics, and it's a strong association. And I've been secretary for roughly 8 years, some plus or minus. There's been enough overlap on that. And I've really had a great chance to work with a lot of good people. And the presidents alone, I'm just going to go through the presidents that I've worked with over that period of time, starting with Mike Reed, going on to Darren Hudson, Par Rawson, Wes Harrison, Barry Barnett, Ron Rainey, Jeffrey Gillespie, Lisa House, and DQ Fields. They're all all-stars. They're all all-stars. It's been a joy to work with them. But I got to tell you, I'm glad Nathan's taken over as secretary. Nathan is a great individual to work with, and I know that Krishna and Tim, you got a lot of help right here. He's really good at what he does, and so we're very fortunate. The job of secretary is in great hands, and in following the nuance of the State of the Union address that's supposed to come tonight, I'll say the state of your association is strong. And you look back over a career, and a career is really a collection of achievements and failures. We have both that we've made over a long, what I call a long and productive period of time. You know, the long is a reward for living a relatively healthy and honest lifestyle. I haven't always been healthy, but I've rarely been in trouble, especially at work. At home, sometimes. But nothing serious. I have had a great family for support. You know, I go back, I'm an Iowa farm boy. It's straight and simple. If you know me, and you work with me at all, you understand what an Iowa farm boy is, because I still got those roots in me. I had great parents. My parents came from the greatest generation, as did my wife's. And they were strong people, good people. I also added later on my wife, Kristen, who's been strong, had to be. And we had 3 wonderful kids, and they're all doing great. They're all doing great. And of course, along the way, you meet a lot of good friends. You know, growing up, I had 2 special friends in school, Tom Safely and Al Frederick. They're farmers in Iowa now, and I love going back and visiting with them. As I've had the great fortune of going back to Omaha for several years in a row to support the Gators in their College World Series baseball tournament. I always stay with my friends that are there, those two farming friends. And what a great 2 weeks that always is. It's something that I'd never pass up, and I'm hoping the Gators get there every year. And they do keep me abreast of what are true issues on the farm, and it's a different perspective when you work that side of it. Now, as I go beyond school, one thing that hasn't come out yet, I said I was going to do this with Mike, and I think I told Stephen the same thing. The 3 of us are Iowans. We all went through Iowa State. 2 of us had George Ladd as a major professor. Stephen had David Henson.
And shut up your day. Oh, sorry.
Close. But what a great institution it was for us to go through and have. And I have to give credit to George Ladd, and I also got to recognize Ron Rakes. Ron Rakes was my co-major professor. I started with him, and you know, it's interesting. I worked for a couple of years between my undergraduate degree and going back into graduate school. I worked at the grain elevator in Iowa. And that's where I got my start and interest in risk management. Now, with that, I learned when you can take chances and when you probably shouldn't take chances. I tried to apply some of that, at least to my lifestyle, and it's kind of dictated, or at least assisted in a lot of things that I've done since. And those 2 faculty, Ron Riggs and George Ladd, helped me write a dissertation. It was on cooperatives. What a unique thought. I went back to Iowa State. When I went there to go to graduate school, I walked in the door because of the work that I was in, and I said, Dr. Riggs, I've got a project for you. I not only had the project for it, but I had the money from the co-ops that said that they paid for it, which was basically my assistantship when I walked in the door. I mean, it was a great opportunity. I ended up writing a dissertation on cooperatives that ended up getting published in the AJAE and won the Cooperative League of the USA Award for Best Dissertation on Cooperatives that year. I mean, it was fun. I had a lot of fun working with them and doing it. But you know, my training, whether it be as an undergraduate or a graduate student, wouldn't have been nearly as productive or as much fun had it not been for your colleagues. I got to give Mike another pat on the back. He kept me straight. He was another one of many students. Between him and Jim Wingener, they were polar opposites. Mike kept me honest. Jim got me in trouble. So, you know, it's not always the book that you learn from when you're in school. It's those relationships and doing it in a good, strong, positive manner. You know, there was another colleague, Mike, that we had when we were in graduate school that came in right in mind. And when we started graduate school, at least then we had an orientation session. We had, during that orientation, they were talking about some of the classes that were going on. I happened to be sitting next to a young man that had just finished his undergraduate degree at the University of Chicago. And as we were sitting there, and they were talking about what we were going to do and some of the things that were going to go on, this kid started writing, and it all looked Greek to me. And I sat there and said, you know, I'm a farm boy from Iowa. Am I out of my league? And it scared me. It honestly scared me. I thought, there's no way that I can succeed here. The competition is way too great. When I've got a guy over here writing things that I can't even hardly read, let alone understand, I thought I was in deep trouble. But what I did do is I went back to the previous 2 years that I worked between my undergrad and my graduate degrees. And I said, you know what? If I just put in 8 hours a day working on nothing but these studies, I can do this. You know, it worked. I could go to work. It was easy for me. I've always been an early goer, and my wife helped me here on this too, because as a school teacher, she did the same thing. She'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to school. And consequently, I got out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning too, and went to school. And it was easy to put in the hours, and as long as you did those 8 hours of work and treated it like a job, graduate school was a piece of cake. It really was easy. I expected to get a master's degree and move on and go back out into the business world. But because I was having so much fun and it just wasn't that difficult, I just went on and completed the dissertation. And I will give Ron Rake some thanks for keeping me at Iowa State. I thought that after I finished my master's degree, I'd go on to the University of Wisconsin, because that was the place I had lived for part of the time in those 2 years between my undergraduate and graduate degrees. But he said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Stay here. You won't do any better. You're established here and you're comfortable. We know what you're like, and I've got a project for you. And so I did. I stayed there, and I'm very happy to have done that. Now let's go on to the next stage of life. The next stage of life for me was taking a job at the University of Florida. I got to thank Leo Palopoulos, Chuck Covey, and John Holt for having faith to hire me as an extension vegetable agent, marketing agent in the state of Florida. A farm boy from Iowa that had grown corn and soybeans, had hogs and cattle, was going to Florida to become a vegetable marketing agent in extension. And I had a three-way appointment. It was extension, research, and teaching. I thought, what did they think about? But they had the faith, and honestly, at that point in time, as Mike said, you know, the things were a little different in terms of the job market back then. Their philosophy at that point in time was, we'll develop the position, and we'll just hire what we think is the best one that's available out there, and let them go to work and define their own program. And that's what they did for me. I walked in, and they pointed me to a desk. I had a phone. I had a chair. They said, go to work. And that's how we got started at that point in time. Going on from there, I did establish my role as a vegetable marketing agent. It was real easy in Florida after we got going. One of the hot topics at that point in time is still a hot topic today, and that happened to be trade. You know, not only do these three winners here come from Iowa State, but they all work on trade issues too. Well, our trade issue was, the hot topic was tomatoes. And so I came in as a rookie, a young rookie, got started and wrote a paper on competition between Florida and Mexico that basically concluded that our industry could compete. They could compete. And it caused such an outrage in the ag industry. There were some that went to the vice president and said, "You need to fire that guy. You need to fire that guy. He's not supporting us." And it was Tiefer Tiller, Dr. Tiefer Tiller, the vice president at the time, and Leo Plotko said, "No. He's got a future here." It sort of gave you the foundation that you could go on. Well, I continued to do the work. And it wasn't but a few short years later that they called me back up. And they said, "You know what? We're filing another case. We're filing another case." And we figured out that not only do you have to prove that there's been damage, but you've also got to prove that you can survive if there's fair trade. As part of going through the process of a 201 petition. You not only have to prove that you can survive, that there's been damage to the case, but you got to either prove that you can survive, or else you're mapping out a time frame when they can easily go out of that industry. They called on me and things went differently in that second case. I helped them through a few things. They settled in a position that they were very happy with, and the next thing I know, they're calling me the Danny Warfel of trade. The same group. They went on to say that we want you to go to Washington, John. And Senator Bob Graham and Adam Putnam, who was congressman at that point, wanted me to become the commissioner of the International Trade Commission. It was a fun ride. But that's the ride you take. And if there's anything to take out of any of that, it's what? The honesty of your science. As long as you're honest to your science, you're going to be protected. You know, the protection that I was afforded, while it wasn't of such brilliance and magnitude as the one at Iowa State, where when Butter did take out a Nobel Prize winner who went on to Chicago and won the Nobel Prize. Pardon?
Many of them went to Chicago.
Stay true to your science. You know, it's easy to sell out, and it's dangerous to always work in and let them dictate what the results are going to be. You've got to let them know that you're going to do the research, and we'll test their hypotheses. But when it's not supported, you've got to let them know, and not let them push you into a corner that you can't do it with. Well, as I worked down through the years, I worked on a lot of risk management issues. But one thing that bothered me is I lacked some of the practical experience in some of the topics that I was teaching in the classroom. Risk management. Now, I did have some risk management experience in the grain elevator. In fact, that's why I had the interest in the first place, because I did buy commodities for the feed department that I was managing at the time. But I thought, how can I teach farmers, or how can I teach students that this is what you need to be doing in risk management if it all is just coming out of the textbook? Well, I had the good fortune of having a nephew whose landlord died and said, we're going to, and the people that inherited the land said, we're going to sell it. You want to buy it? My nephew couldn't afford it, but I said, he came to talk to me, and we became partners. I told him I'd be a partner as long as I got my half of the crop, and it was up to me to market that crop. He gladly took the proposition. I became I got back closer to my roots from where I came from. And I've had an interesting ride with him, but you know, it's kind of funny. Here I come in, I teach risk management, I do all sorts of other things in terms of just working with people out in the industry. And it's not and most of you won't be surprised. My nephew frequently outperforms me in terms of average price received. But we do eliminate some of our practical risk, you know. But to move on with that, I stretched that into going beyond that. I bought 4 blocks of oranges down in South Florida also. I just couldn't leave my roots as a farmer. I really wanted to keep that practical experience. It has helped me in terms of the things that I do and the things that I've worked on. Now, with that, using those practical experiences in the class, I'm real proud to say that I've got a lot of students that have gone on that work in the field. I had a student by the name of Evan Shinbaum, who graduated, went to work for Cargill, worked for them for about 5 years, then got hired by, and I can't think of the firm's name, but it's a firm that's located in Lafayette, West Lafayette, Indiana. It's a hog slaughtering company. And he was hired in as their vice president for risk management. And he calls me up frequently. We'll talk about the markets. We'll talk about some of the nuances of risk management. And frequently, we usually talk about the gators also. It's people like him that where you know you've made the connection. And you know, that's what makes teaching fun. Teaching's fun when you sit there and you teach these concepts that may be totally unreasonable to a lot of people. But you sit there and you watch the students and the ones that are just trying to get through and get it educated, and suddenly the light bulb goes on. When you capture those, that's when the job is the most fun. Because they'll come in and they'll spend time with you. And they get excited about learning. And they go in and they work the profession. And I've been very fortunate to have people like him that have done that. You know, there's been a lot of agricultural economists who influenced my career. I've had some shout out that I want to give to some of what I consider the great educators that influenced me. And but most of them probably aren't here. But still, I want to recognize that people like John Adrian, who was the chair at Auburn University, was somebody I worked with early in my career through the vegetable committee. Him and Jim Epperson from the University of Georgia. Tim Woods was on that committee also. Knows some of those great people. Ed Estes, you know, those colleagues that you build those relationships with that become your friends and give you ideas and work with you on some of the problems that you work with. I also want to recognize Hal Harris, Ron Knudsen, Luther Tweeden, and that whole slew of policy people that came through the extension side and invigorated people like me and Joe Outlaw and a lot of other folks to work on some of the issues that we do. Now, we are all educators. We all talk to perhaps different audiences, whether it be teaching or research or extension. I've enjoyed working with the farmers. I've enjoyed working with the students. I've enjoyed working with my colleagues. Even though some of them be cranky at times. Take your pick of the group, because they all do. I've got to touch on the last group of folks that have had an influence on my life, and that's the graduate students. Graduate students are fun to work with because their light bulb always goes on at some point, or they don't make it. They don't make it. I mean, I was on the faculty at the University of Florida when Marco Palma finished his dissertation. You've seen that light. Everybody saw that light go on, right? And of course, we got the students like Fanny Gang. Are you here, Fanny? Don't be afraid. Well, this young student of mine, there he is. Stand up. He's my graduate student now from China that I'm working with. And we get together at least once a week and we'll sit and talk for 1 or 2 hours. And not about the topic, but just about life. That's the fun part of the job, and whether it be with farmers, whether it be with undergraduates, or whether it be with graduate students, or whether it be with just a colleague. That's what makes this profession so good. It's about relationships, and while we can be productive on our own, we'll never be as rewarded as we are when we work together. So with that, I appreciate the honor. Jeff, let me in. He had to figure out a way to get rid of me as secretary, and he finally did. He said, I'm going to give him the award, maybe he'll go away. With that, honest people, I love working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, John and Mike and Stephen. We appreciate getting to hear about what you reflect on and take some messages from that. And I agree with what all of you said. What better career can we have than one where we get to keep learning, where we get to explore what we want to, including the world, and where we establish friends, not only through our university, but through organizations like that. So with that, thank you again very much. You all are very deserving, and I think it is interesting that we have the Iowa State thing going too. I don't think that was done on purpose necessarily, but maybe that says something about Iowa State's time. So again, I encourage everybody to take advantage of all the networking opportunities, given what we've just done and all the sessions coming up. And we look forward to seeing you through the rest of the day. Jeff, any announcements for our folks?
Yeah, man.
Thank you, everybody.